Hey everyone, this is Andy Hall, and with me in spirit is William Levenois. He is a member of Extinction Rebellion. We're right now having technical issues, and so I'm going to start the show. Hopefully we're going to be able to resolve the issues before it gets too late. Wait a minute, I have William right here. William, how you doing? We are live right now, sir.
Good morning.
Hey.
Hi. This is about the fifth device that I've tried, and let's working. Oh my gosh, great. Okay, good to be here.
Okay, great, man. So, how do you pronounce your last name before I start off? Before we go any further?
You said it exactly correctly. Thank you.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I feel
first person in a long time. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I should get some kind of badge for that because coming from the Boston area, I just destroy language. I destroy people's names on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a mood. But no, I mean, yeah, I pronounce it the French way because my parents told me to.
Very good, very good. So, you were part of Extinction Rebellion.
That's right. Yeah.
I was just on the Extinction Rebellion website today, and I'm just going to pull this up. And of course, we've both seen this a bunch of times, but for people in the audience who aren't acquainted with Extinction Rebellion, I thought this would be informative. One of the first things you see on Extinction Rebellion is we declare non-violent rebellion against the U.S. government for its criminal inaction on the ecological crisis.
Yes.
That's pretty strong language.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't quite see it that way. Probably because it's the language that I'm quite familiar with. But it's it comes from the fact that I think Roger Hallam and a couple of other people say like the inaction of the government on climate change is criminal, and I mean you can just look at the history of the environmental movement and even climate justice movement and all. Like things have to keep escalating, and this is the next stage. The next tactic. I don't know, but to try
right.
Create change.
So in terms of being an active rebellion, what does that mean to you?
It means. I think it means like doing it's just doing what you think what like is morally right, like acting on your own morals, and trying to and it's a lot of questioning of what you want for your future, or what other people like, what's best for your community.
Sure.
Yeah.
What kind of activities have you done while being involved with Extinction Rebellion? What kind of Extinction Rebellion activities have you been involved with?
Well, there's been a lot of smaller actions, because I mean there's kind of a mix of big actions that are done chapter wide or even worldwide. Like this right now is the week of rebellion, and it's staggered a little bit by different countries in different parts of the world, but there's a lot of actions going on as a part of that. But I know that right now in Boston there's small actions or local actions of declaring climate emergency locally. But I guess so things I've been involved with are so there's a recent big action that happened was we deployed a sign onto a banner onto the Sicko sign declaring that we want climate justice now, because I mean it's interesting that a fossil fuel company is a Boston landmark, and something that is active, that is complacent in killing people and destroying our future. So that was a big action, and that was kind of a statement. And then some of the smaller things that we've done. Let's see. So something one of the most fun actions that I've been a part of is is doing caroling in malls around the Boston area, and they're themed to be they're caroling with like theme towards like the climate crisis and stuff, and spreading the good news or the bad news.
Now I haven't heard about the carolings. So you would go to area malls and sing environmentally themed carols?
Yeah, and I feel like that. I think that's a really good. It's in the spirit of like the Boston chapter, because the Boston chapter loves singing and stuff. And it's great because it was very decentralized. There, but different groups went to different malls, and it was just like that was like that kind of goes into like the performance art of some of Extinction Rebellion's activities. And it was and so I was at the Copley Mall, and wow, did I I lived in Boston for 8 years. Did I say that wrong? Whoops.
That's okay.
And yeah, and so it was just and the like the we weren't allowed there. We'd like the security was not super happy, and we just were there as long as we could be. And it was very fun because people came and joined us. Like they joined, like we had little lyric sheets, and people came and could join us in singing the songs. And they weren't like they were. I mean, it's talking about the climate crisis. So like the songs are like, and the global warming and mass extinction and 75% of So it's not, but it was a really fun, like I think it's a good encapsulation of like what Extinction Rebellion tries to do with it, because yeah, it's horrifying when you learn of like what is happening, and what scientists are like unanimously agree is going to happen, and so like bringing people together and doing like these actions raise awareness, and in the that's the like the theory is to get more and more people involved and create a movement, but it's also good to do things that are that are fun and create a community. So
yeah, I think that there is this conception amongst the general public that environmentalists are not fun people, that there's a stereotype of like vegetarians, of being just like grumpy and wanting to kill the party. But this caroling, I think, is genius. That's a genius idea.
Yeah, I mean the actions themselves are a lot of fun. Like it's like people dress up, and like I guess something that happened more recently was on tax day. There was a tax day action, rebelling against the Federal Reserve for bailing out fossil fuel companies, and I actually was dressed up as a billionaire. I was an oil baron billionaire, so I had a tuxedo, and we had and we were on we had a boat, and like we had a big march in front of the Federal Reserve. So, or yeah, sizable march. So
that's what I really like. One of the aspects I like about Extinction Rebellion is its focus on the theatrical, on gaining attention, because it seems like the media doesn't really want to focus on the environment or on the environmental crisis.
Yeah, I mean, so something like an action that got me involved in Extinction Rebellion was, and it was not something that I was happy about. Was there was an action where Extinction Rebellion like probably glued themselves or like blocked the entrances of the New York Times, and when I first heard that, it actually made me pretty angry. I was like, what are these people doing? Like this is insanity. Because like New York Times, like that's a pretty, I feel like that's a pretty good news source. Like they report on they have like a swing in like what I generally read. And then like thinking about that a little bit, I mean it's like that is the gold standard. I don't know, or like it is the gold standard for like news, and or at least left wing news. But they are not reporting on this stuff as much as they should be, because this is going to concern everybody. And the fact that is true is kind of insane. And so a lot of the actions in Boston have recently been about like calling out news sources and being like, you should report on these things that are happening.
Dude, because I think we've been in this conversation for about 10 minutes now, and I think that we can get to the dude level. I can call you dude. I was on the Facebook page of Extinction Rebellion Today, Boston. And WHDH is a news, Channel 7 News here in the Boston area. Extinction Rebellion did this analysis of the news, and the results are pretty staggering. Extinction Rebellion found only 17 climate-related video segments since the January 1st of 2019. That's less than a month. And the environmental threat is huge. 8 of these segments were protest actions. 4 were devoted to a single person, Greta, and 4 were about aspects of climate politics or policy. We found only 1 segment about the science or impacts of climate change, and that was about a story of melting ice in the Antarctic. And lastly, we found no individual segments of the ways climate change is affecting or will affect the local region or the world at large. That is disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like I like being part of, like, once you join these circles, you hear about the local things that are happening. Like right now, it's more environmental. No, I mean it's all related. Like there's a permit to chop down trees in Roxbury right now, and that's like an ongoing, like, people are trying to stop that. That's happening. That's something that's happening right now. Like I think it's like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, people are gathering to like try to prevent this from happening. And then just the fact that the seaport is built is like this huge city. It's like, it looks like a suburb of New York, and it's built on like below sea level. I don't know. It's
if anyone comes to the Boston area and comes to the Seaport District, which is huge, and you're right, it is a huge built up area, and it happens to rain.
Yeah.
We were at Laugh Boston, which is, in the Seaport area, and it was raining, and oh my God, it was very difficult to drive around. There was so much water on the roads.
Yeah. And then like just little things like MIT has investments until like 20. I think they have investments in parts of the buildings until like some level. And I think that one action that happened a couple of years ago that was like, that actually was very thought provoking for me, is that somebody went and put like the line of where the water will be when those investments are through, and it was like up to like past the first floor of most of those buildings. And it's like, yeah, I mean there's a lot of
yeah, and this is what people need. They need to see things. They need to see it and have it affect them in a real way to understand that climate change is real. It is here, and it's just going to get worse. Yeah.
And I an argument that I hear a lot is that it's not going to affect me specifically, right? Or and first of all, that's like, I have problems with the argument in the first place, because it's going to affect somebody, and like in a very negative way, and that should be concerning by itself. But it is true that if you read the IPCC, so you read the IPCC reports, which are conservative, they are talking about huge changes in like geopolitical stability. I think they even mentioned that. I actually, yeah, I won't be certain on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's mentioned in one of their reports. And yeah,
sure.
It's in effect a lot.
Neil, the 604 atheist from the chat, who happens to be a proud Canadian, states climate deniers in positions of power is a dangerous thing.
Yeah,
that you cannot argue with that fact.
No, not at all.
So, have you had face-to-face experience with climate deniers while you're protesting?
Yes, but it's almost, I don't know if Extinction Rebellion specifically is focused on that, right? Because the theory of change is kind of mobilization of a minority percentage of the population will push the Overton window, or like create the force to make change. It's a very big picture strategy, compared to a lot of other climate movements, but or climate organizations. But basically, what that means is that it's hard to focus on climate deniers. Like it's like there's no time, right? Like you really want to get people who already kind of are on board with it and tell them that they need to act, or like, right, it makes the actions you did, like, because it's a small group of people. That's why the nonviolent direct action is a very powerful tool, and there's a lot of risk to individual, of course, but you have to, like, convincing people that this is what needs to happen and that it can work is important. So I will say that, like, you do like doing like a protest on the street, like we do. There was like some swarmings where we don't even block traffic. I think like most of them, and people are still like like just the typical, like, oh, what a bunch of vegans, like, go get a job, like all that kind of stuff. But like that's like hopefully those people will be infected and like have some kind of change, but like there's no time, like really just the people who are already understand that climate change is real and are kind of like wondering, like a little bit iffy on the facts, like those are the people that like need to act, right, or that can feasibly be convinced to act. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about the letter that the Boston chapter sent to Channel 7 News is that 8 stories were about protests. And that just is proof of concept about how important it is to protest in a theatrical way to get media attention.
Yeah. It gets to a point where it gets to be a bit cynical, because you go to an action and then somebody's like, there's no footage, like that means this didn't happen. And I was like, oh well, no, like it's good that we're doing, like the action is also for us, and like, to create, like, to trial and error and like all that stuff to try to go forward with it. But yeah, no, absolutely, like the media attention is very important, and the theatrics help with that. And also and I guess, as I was saying earlier, like my initial reaction to all of this was anger and kind of like, who do these people think they are? But then, I'm very involved now. So I think it's like, coming from whatever your path is, like it's as long as like the media exposure is important.
Yeah. I was reading that you only need 3.5% of a population to be actively involved in a movement for it to have some serious impact. Yeah, that's the number. It's from this paper that analyzes a bunch of nonviolent movements in the past, I think, 100, 200 years. I don't know where in the paper it says 3.5%. I've looked for that number a bunch, but it is the paper is specifically talking about how, first of all, nonviolent movements have more of a chance, or I mean, based on looking at these these other nonviolent movements. And then the 3.5% comes from, like, the which ones were effective, like how much of the population was required, or Sure. And it proves, or it helps support the idea that relatively small, motivated people can really create change in ways that you would not have expected just at first blush. So I was looking, So I was looking on the website for XR Rebellion USA, for Extinction Rebellion, and it looks like a pretty bleak picture by 2050 if we don't take radical action right now. Anything from heat waves, more forest fires, more floods and hurricanes, increased droughts, water shortages, rising sea levels, coastal flooding, loss of wildlife on land and in the oceans. A lot of people don't realize that just because there is climate change, but that is affecting the oceans. There's reductions of food production, impacts on human health, mass displacement, poverty and financial stability, social instability and conflict. It's a pretty powerful picture.
Yeah, and it comes from research papers that were published in like PNAS. I forget what that stands for, but there's like yeah, I mean, there's like, I feel like there's two big papers about climate change that talk about the extinction of different species, and they don't even, and that's the thing, those are scientific papers, and they don't even go into, they just talk about like numbers and like statistics of how people can survive, and that doesn't even take into account people's humanity or the geopolitical stuff, which is like you mentioned a couple of things there.
Right. Neil, the 604 atheist, mentioned the acidification of the oceans.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, having seen a documentary on water and the acidification of oceans, if you have too much acid in the oceans, it gets in the way of being plankton being able to build up these skeletons, these exoskeletons. It just it stymies them so that there are these less of these creatures that are at the bottom of the food pyramid. And
Wow.
if they are destroyed, then guess what? Everything else is affected.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah. I you know more than me about that. It just doesn't sound like the acidification of the ocean just sounds terrible by itself as like a
right. The idea that the ocean gets acidic, that can't be a good thing.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working with, or how long have you been involved with Extinction Rebellion?
I've been involved with Extinction Rebellion for almost exactly a year now. And to be fair, Extinction Rebellion is, I think, in the U.S., I think it's a year and a half old, and I think in the U.K. it started in fall of or spring of 2018, maybe. So that's like a little over 2 years. But in I mean, there's a lot of hope because in the UK it's really grown a lot, and like all of the initial like this is what we want to have happen. Like they've met a lot of those goals, and you can really see how the conversation has changed politically because as a result of Extinction Rebellion. And in the US it's I mean we're like we were like about a year behind them in terms of like creating chapters and doing things and stuff. But yeah, you're starting to see more and more in here in the US.
Yeah. In London, they Extinction Rebellion shut down London, or at least shut down areas of London.
Yeah, they shut down a bunch. They literally blocked it. They blocked like 5 or 6 bridges, and that was a very big action that really got a lot of, like, they had a lot of people were arrested. That's the statistic that I feel like decided a lot of these actions, for better or for worse. But yeah, like it was a really big deal. And I will say that people are, yeah, I mean, people are concerned about the tactics. People have concern about the tactics because it's just like it sounds so insane. Like why would you block a bridge for everybody? Like what? Like some people are good people. Like what are you doing there? But you see the impact that it has, and like this is an emergency, and like we need those big impact actions.
Fair enough.
Happen, right? Yeah.
So what's it like organizing and being part of an organization that does these kind of events? What's it like doing them during a pandemic?
Yeah, well, the strategy changes a lot because the whole thing about is forming a big group in a and usually it's outdoors, but like that's still not good. But I mean I feel like the sicko sign action is kind of a good, like we were able to pull it off, and I feel like I'm pretty proud of how that went, and all the measures that were taken to be safe and also to make sure that it happens.
Well, I think the Citgo sign was genius because anyone who knows anything about Boston, that Citgo sign pretty much represents a lot of ways. I don't know how this happened, but it represents a lot of Boston. You know, it's just an image that anyone who's been around Fenway Park knows about. How difficult was it to to put up the sign on this to do that action?
It was it was really difficult. The court case is ongoing, actually, but the what I will say is that it was a large group of people, and I'd say like the coordinating online, and then social distancing in person and all that stuff was made it like just added some little hurdles. But I think one of the great things is that Extinction Rebellion has a list of principles, like I feel like most organizations do, but the idea that we accept every part of everyone, and all the decisions are you typically use like sociocracy, or like just a consensus based thing, and so it's decentralized, and it's really. It really is rewarding, because when you pull off these actions, and you have a group of people, and you all kind of agree on things, or like create a path forward together, then it feels like the most it feels like the best way to do it, and so then that makes the action feel very worth it, because it was passed around a group. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people involved. I think that there were 10 of us arrested, and that group this is published everywhere, is went onto the Seco sign, and there are people at the top, there are people at the bottom, and there was a whole hoist thing, and the wind was tricky. The forecast was different, and the wind switched directions, but we had a bunch of backup systems that mostly worked.
Right.
And
it sounds like you must have had an engineer in your career.
Yes, we had a couple. We had, I have an engineering background, but so do a lot of people so did a couple other people in the group, and so there was a lot of calculations and figuring out force vectors and stuff.
Now, was getting arrested part of the plan? In other words, could you have done the plan without getting arrested, but this was a choice that you guys made?
Yeah. So here's the thing. The thing about the arresting that I think is my opinion. It's maybe not the opinion of other people, but the goal is not to get, the goal of the action is not to get arrested. The goal of the action is to bend or break the rules in a way that gets attention, and then as a result of that is likely going to be some kind of like arresting, or getting arrested, or getting kicked out of somewhere or something, and so I think that like in this action, like there is no escaping the arresting. Like there's really no way to do that because of just the different laws that exist. But I don't think there's a way to do there. In this case, there was no way to do, like, one of the things about nonviolence is that, I mean, you want to own what you did, and that's the powerful thing, is that like you are taking this risk because it's so important to you, and so in that way, I guess the rest is important, or at least being totally transparent and honest about what you're doing is pretty clear.
Sure.
Because I feel like I had some friends who were like, why didn't you just deploy it and then run away? And it was like, well, that kind of defeats the whole ideology behind that, I guess.
Right. So walk me through getting arrested. I have had to run from cops when I was much younger, but I've never been arrested. So let's say I am hoisting the sign up, cops come, I get arrested. How long am I in jail for? How do I get out? What occurs?
So the first of all, like in like all the actions I've heard of Extinction Rebellion, there's not really any resisting of arrest. It's just because you know it's going to happen and you just kind of accept it. And so you get handcuffed and you go into the paddy wagon and they take you to be processed and put into jail. And then you usually there, like for us, it was we were there overnight, and you're you the let's see, and then in Massachusetts, bail is $40, or that's the baseline bail. So having $40 on you is always a good idea, but then it can get you can get posted bail much higher than that. It turns out bail is such a scam anyway.
So I post bail and I'm basically out free until my court date. Is that what happens?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
All right.
If you can't afford bail, then you are in jail until the court date.
So for doing the Citgo sign, is that a misdemeanor? Is that a felony?
Well, we don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Actually, the court date hasn't even happened yet, technically, because it turns out the legal system is very interesting. You get the arraignment is the first process that happens where you get your charges posted, and in our case, that's been postponed twice. And I mean, during COVID, there's a bunch of other issues like the fact that a lot of hearings happen over Zoom, and also there's no grand jury, and there's a bunch of or maybe that's changing soon, but there's a lot of issues there. So it's actually a little bit higher risk right now, maybe. But,
is there Tons of Mice, thank you for your support, Tons of Mice, by the way. She's a patron of mine. She says, get Andy arrested. Well, that may happen, that may not happen. Who knows what I'll do over the next 6 months to a year as I become more involved with Extinction Rebellion. Who knows? Or my own deviltry. So what's this? What's the do you guys just plead guilty? Do you plead out, or is there a plan that Extinction Rebellion recommends for you to do?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of trainings on what to do when. And it's actually, I feel like it's good for everybody, especially during these times. There's lots of protests and stuff happening, and it's good to know that things like don't talk it could be used against you, all that stuff. But then there's also, so we're represented by a lawyer from the National Lawyers Guild, and that's been really, really nice, like awesome. We have somebody who's very good at this kind of thing, representing us.
Well, that must make you feel better that you have a lawyer having your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, no, it's been really great. Like I mean, there are a couple of different groups. Like ACLU probably has probably supports different actions, but yeah, the National Lawyers Guild is a really great organization. They're specifically for justice movements and providing legal counsel and stuff for that. And they're at least in Massachusetts, it's a very good group of people.
Cool.
And yeah.
So what you mentioned trainings? What kind of trainings does Extinction Rebellion give its members?
So there's basically three main things that happen to get involved in the organization. There's kind of an orientation that kind of just give you a general idea of what Extinction Rebellion is, and that's kind of what this is. I feel like it's just very generic, like what Extinction Rebellion is and why we're doing this and that kind of thing. There is and then there's the talks that are given called Headed for Extinction talks, which are very informative and kind of life-changing, but not fun. But they just basically go through all the science. It's like all the science, all of the current issues that are happening, and it's just a really good way to convince you that things are looking really bad, and that really big change needs to happen. I mean, yeah, and there's actually a lot of scientific literature cited in those slideshows, and there's actually a lot online. A lot of those have been posted on YouTube and stuff. But then to learn how to act and how to act well and with nonviolence, there's nonviolent direct action trainings, which go into the history of nonviolence, and also to kind of get some perspective on that, and then like what to do when somebody's yelling at you. Like, I feel like that part of the training is just like when there's kind of protesters, like how do you deal with that, because that's a really tough thing to do, as a, from in the moment, or even
What do you do when someone's yelling at you?
That's good. Everybody has a different thing. Something that I think is cool is doing singing with your peers, or just kind of doing something to join together. And I know, it's there's not really a palatable solution to getting confronted by somebody who is yelling at you, because it's not a fun situation. But I feel like it's a great way to diffuse a situation, and it makes you feel part of a group and kind of grounds you a little bit in the moment. And Extinction Rebellion has a lot of great songs, and I feel like it's also better than chanting, because it sounds it's less violent. Like, it's non-violent. It's a non-violent action. So
I think that's a great strategy. I've worked with people who have disabilities for a number of years or decades at this point. Some at times violent people, and I would give trainings every once in a while on how to de-escalate situations. And I have found at times, depending on the particular situation, doing something like that, just doing something maybe a little off the wallish, singing, for example, that's, I think that is some real insight there.
Yeah, and I think this might be a specific. It seems like the Boston chapter has a lot of like singing people, and it's great. And it's just something that I think is like fun about the Boston chapter specifically of Extinction Rebellion. Yeah.
Cool. So what don't I know that I should know about Extinction Rebellion?
Well, actions are happening all the time. In fact, right now there's a lot of different actions happening locally in different towns around in the Boston area, and even outside the Boston area. But like there's local actions to push government to declare a climate emergency. Like that's something that's happening. It's been happening this weekend, and it's continuing to happen. So that's something that I think is important to know. Like the things are very active right now. The pandemic has, thrown a wrench in just about everything. And I think that it was hard for us to figure out what to do going forward. But like that's become pretty clear now. And I think there's a great group of people.
I was on the website, like I said earlier today, and there is definitely, you can make a click to a link and you can find if there is a chapter near you. And you can, if there is, So just spitball this. How many chapters do you think there are?
Well, that's good to know that got rolled out, because I'm actually on the infrastructure team, and I'm glad that that's a thing that the feature that finally got fully implemented. So great, that's good to know. That's going to be a really good feature because this Extinction Rebellion is a decentralized organization, and doing that more is better for the movement. But right now, so there's I feel like right now there's XR Boston, there's XR Worcester, and XR Cape. Like there's a couple of bigger nodes, but I know that right now, like because of this emergency everywhere, like force or whatever, there's like people, like there's actions that are Somerville specific. Arlington, I know has big. Watertown, I think, has a bunch of big actions. In Boston, there's a couple too. But that's not. I don't think that's quite fully separate chapters right now. But that is something that is trying to happen, actively happening.
So
oops, go ahead.
When you're planning out an action like the sick dose sign, because Extinction Rebellion is a decentralized organization, what kind of process does a chapter go through to figure out this is the right thing to do?
That's a good question. The chapter has different working groups. So for different action. There's like an action working group, which is specifically focused on planning actions and the logistics of that. And then there's a media messaging. There's like art, and there's like regenerative culture, making sure that people don't get burnt out and stuff, and creating a good atmosphere for activism. So I think those are the main ones. Oh yeah, and there's also infrastructure for infrastructure for things. But so for the sicko sign, it was actually a group of people from Boston, some people from Vermont, some people from New York actually got involved in that action. So that was kind of its own separate subgroup from a couple of different chapters, as part of like there's a Northeast support group, and that's support team. Or like the way that's organized is a little bit different, but it was kind of organized from that. But in the same way, there's different teams of people getting in, like parts of the action, right?
Interesting. I have this note on my little piece of paper that I wrote here from the website. It says, "Organizing is the antidote to despair." And I found that pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about climate change is climate change is that it's so huge, and all these existential like questions come up about like what's going to happen to this, what's going to happen to this, and it's terrible to just sit in, or it feels terrible to just sit in that and not be doing anything. And I feel like this changes from person to person, but I kind of really got involved out of a desperation to want to do anything, and that's evolved over time a bit, with some more like grounding and getting involved in other organizations. But it does just quench that anxiety. I don't know. It can quench that a lot. I don't think it's a total solution to climate anxiety. Like there's other tools and resources for that, but it does help a lot to know that you're actually doing something about it. And the other thing that's hard first getting involved is that the theory of changes is very big picture, and so it's hard to conceptualize what is going to happen as a result of climate change, also what's going to happen as a result of the individual actions. But I think working with other people and like interacting with them is definitely a big part of that feeling, or like making the connection, in activism and with other people who care strongly about this stuff is really the antidote. What was the full quote again?
It is, organizing is the antidote to despair.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the people, seeing how many people are care about this so deeply and want to do things, or like and are actively doing things is definitely gives everyone a lot of hope. So
that's great. So we're heading down towards the end of our time. William, is there a question that you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? And this isn't about plugging websites or anything like that, but was there something you really wanted to talk about, but we just didn't get to?
I guess the side of it that is important to know. So the demands of Extinction Rebellion, we haven't talked about those really at all. And there's in the US there's 4 demands. In the UK chapter there's 3 demands, but basically the first 3 demands are tell the truth, act now. Oh my gosh! Wow, tell the truth. There's a song for it actually that we sing to kind of help us. But basically, declare climate emergency, net zero emissions by 2025. Citizens assembly. So making sure that that government has a citizens assembly to ensure that government does the correct action. And then the 4th demand is a just transition for those most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And I think it's important that having demands is very important in an organization. Those are somewhat like you can interpret them as being specific and as being pretty open ended, but they Extinction Rebellion itself is is a big picture organization. So the fact that it has those relatively clear demands makes it so that you like when you're doing an action and stuff, it's like very clear, like this is what we want. This is exactly what so
cool.
I mentioned that, I guess.
All right. So Tons of Mice from the chat has a question. They say, I finished reading David Quammen's, I probably ruined his name, Spillover last night. Seems like many problems are due to human population explosion. How can that be fixed? For me, when I think of, do you want to take that, William, or you want me to spitball an answer on that while you're thinking?
How about you go first? Yeah. Yes, that's good.
Amongst industrialized countries like the United States, Canada, Germany, France, the population is decreasing over time. There is a ratio of children to women. I think it's 2.1, it's statistics. So every woman needs to have 2.1 children for the population to stay stable. In countries like Germany, like Spain, like Italy, that number is lower than 2.1, and their populations are decreasing over time. In the United States of America, our population is increasing a little bit, and that is due to immigration. Even with populations who are nations with populations that are increasing, like China, or Pakistan, or Nigeria, the slope of their population increase is flattening. And that is a product of the fact that when you have a social safety net in a society, we just don't have as many children, because in cultures without a social safety net, their safety is from their children. So if I was in the Middle Ages, I needed to have children to support me when I could not work any longer. Now that we have Social Security, other countries have the social safety net, there isn't as much of an incentive to have children. So that's why at some point the global population will be getting smaller and smaller. That's at least how I understand the human population issue currently.
Okay, yeah, that's really informative. That's stuff I haven't thought about specifically. So thank you. But I think something that's important to know that I really didn't mention very well is that there's part of why Extinction Rebellion exists is that there are solutions to so many of the issues that are there are existing solutions that could very well be implemented for various parts of the results of climate change. And I mean, one thing is that the food or generation of agriculture is a huge emitter, but also everybody needs to eat, for sure. And so there's ways to there are methods for sustainably growing things. Everybody's like plant-based diet. Plant-based diet is one of them, but like even just kind of a shift in methods of agriculture and stuff are listed as like some of the things that can be done. There's a great website called Project Drawdown that goes through a lot of the biggest problems with, or it's specifically focused on greenhouse gas emissions. So it's the biggest issues with greenhouse gas emissions and solutions that can be implemented right now. And I know that food and agriculture is on there, and I know that's not exactly human population, but it fits into both. It connects the two issues a little bit.
Oh, definitely. You have a lot of people in the world who want to eat pork or want to eat, some kind of beef product. That does increase the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And I just became a vegetarian in August, the 1st of August. And even though I did it so that I wouldn't be involved in the suffering of animals, a secondary reason and an important reason for me is to decrease my carbon footprint.
Yeah. And it's not even like for the just thinking about like greenhouse gas emissions, like it's just a reduction. Reduction is good for that. Like people don't need to stop eating like the things, like it's just a sustainable, like just be more sustainable about it. But the other thing that the underlying thing about all this is that there are solutions. They exist, and they can be implemented, and the frustration that kind of leads to this and has been over the years. Like 2008, you have the Al Gore gave the Inconvenient Truth movie, and then like 2014, I feel like there was a lot of actions. Like, there was like a lot of intense action against the fast food industry, and like those things have happened, and like there have been solutions this whole time, and it's getting harder and harder to implement them, but they do still exist. So that's the criminal inaction of the government. Anyway, yeah.
Indeed, the criminal inaction. Well, I think we covered a lot in our conversation today, William. Thanks for coming on my YouTube channel. Do you have any big Extinction Rebellion plans or schemes that you can speak of that you'll be involved with?
Not actually at the moment, because I am in the middle of the country.
Oh,
moving actually, but and that's kind of why it took me 5 devices to get here. And I'm very glad that I finally made it. But yeah, anyway.
Well, so am I. This has been a great conversation. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, dude. Take care.
Yeah, you too.